13 black female singers with the sexiest bodies every man desires. Behind every glittering stage light lies a dark, glittering trap that few ever escape. Imagine possessing the most desired body in the world, earning a staggering $200,000 a year, only to vanish into a religious college to save your soul. Or being a global Bond girl, yet dying with just $2 in your bank account. These aren't just stories of fame. They are the raw, unfiltered tragedies of 13 black icons whose beauty became their gilded cage. From Motown's forgotten queens to Hollywood's exiled sirens, the truth is far rougher than the glamorous surface you've been sold. Are you ready to face the shadows behind the glow? Subscribe to Memory Lane Black People right now and hit the bell. Don't let these legends fade into oblivion. Joyce Bryant. In the smoky, high-stakes atmosphere of 1950s nightlife, Joyce Bryant emerged not just as a vocalist, but as a seismic event. Dubbed the Bronze Blonde Bombshell and the Black Marilyn Monroe, Bryant's physical presence was an architect's dream and a censor's nightmare. She famously performed in backless, silver lane mermaid dresses that were so restrictive she had to be physically carried onto the stage and placed before the microphone. These gowns, tightened to highlight a definitive hourglass silhouette, became her gilded cage. With her hair sprayed a signature metallic silver, a look that eventually caused her scalp to break out in sores and her hair to fall out in patches, she commanded fees of $2,000 per week, an astronomical sum for a black entertainer in an era of rigid segregation. Her voice was as spectacular as her form, a rare 4-octave instrument that could pivot from a guttural blues growl to a crystalline operatic soprano. Hits like Love for Sale and Drunk with Love were so dripping with raw, carnal energy that they were banned from radio airwaves, only fueling the public's obsession with her. Bryant wasn't just a singer, she was a boundary breaker who headlined at the Casino Royale in Washington, D.C., defying the KKK's effigy-burning threats outside the doors. However, the Sexiest Body title carried a heavy spiritual tax. Raised in a devout Seventh-day Adventist household, Joyce lived in a state of perpetual internal warfare. The industry exploited her sinful magnetism while she privately sought absolution. In 1955, at the absolute zenith of her earning power and physical fame, she stunned the world by walking away from a $200,000 a year career to enroll in a religious college, seeking to cleanse the image that had captivated millions. She traded the silver paint for a choir robe, eventually returning to the stage only as a classical singer, proving that while the world desired her body, Joyce Bryant was always fighting to save her soul. Dorothy Dandridge. Dorothy Dandridge was the ultimate cinematic Aphrodite, a woman whose incandescent beauty and rhythmic grace redefined the parameters of the Hollywood starlet. Long before she became the first African-American woman to be nominated for the Academy Award for Best Actress for her role in Carmen Jones, 1954, Dorothy was a seasoned songstress who electrified the nightclub circuit from the Cotton Club to the Moulin Rouge in Paris. Her physique was a masterpiece of mid-century glamour. She possessed a poise that felt both untouchable and dangerously inviting. When she walked into a room, the air seemed to thin. Dandridge's magnetism was a double-edged sword. While every man desired the Carmen persona, the fiery, red-clad temptress with the predatory gaze, Dorothy herself was a woman of immense sophistication and tragic vulnerability. In Carmen Jones, she commanded the screen with a raw, earthy sensuality that earned the film a staggering $9 million at the box office on a modest budget. Yet Hollywood's systemic bias meant that the industry saw her as a tragic mulatto archetype rather than a versatile lead. She was famously told she was too beautiful for certain roles, yet too dark for others, trapped in a limbo where her physical perfection became an obstacle to her artistic growth. Her personal life was a gauntlet of emotional upheaval. Behind the dazzling gowns lay the pain of a daughter born with severe brain damage and a string of exploitative relationships, including a high-profile, secretive affair with director Otto Preminger. Despite her global fame, she was often barred from staying in the very hotels where she performed. once famously dipping her toe into a whites-only pool in Las Vegas, only to have the management drain the entire thing afterward. By 1965, the woman who had set the screen ablaze was found dead with only $2 in her bank account, a victim of a fractured system that adored her curves but refused to honor her humanity. Dorothy Dandridge remains the definitive icon of Black Hollywood's golden age, a star who burned with a light that the world wasn't yet ready to handle. Tina Turner. If the history of music had a physical blueprint for resilience and raw magnetism, it would be the silhouette of Tina Turner. Known globally as the Queen of Rock and Roll, Tina didn't just walk onto a stage, she detonated upon it. Her physique was legendary, defined by a pair of legs so iconic they were reportedly insured for $3.2 million. But her sex appeal was never about passive beauty, it was a display of athletic, rhythmic power. In the 1960s and 70s, as the centerpiece of the Ike and Tina Turner Revue, she performed high-octane choreography that combined the fervor of a gospel revival with a predatory, carnal energy. Clad in shimmering fringe dresses that danced with every muscular stride, she became the gold standard for what it meant to be a naturally captivating performer. However, the image of the fearless vixen was a mask for a harrowing domestic battlefield. Behind the scenes of hits like Proud Mary, which sold over 1 million copies, Tina was enduring a decade of horrific physical and psychological abuse at the hands of Ike Turner. Her sexiest body was, in reality, a vessel of survival, often bruised and hidden under heavy makeup before she stepped into the spotlight to give the performance of a lifetime. Her escape in 1976, with nothing but 36 cents and a gasoline credit card, is one of the most heroic chapters in entertainment history. Tina's second act in the 1980s was a cultural phenomenon. At age 44, when the industry usually discards female stars, she released Private Dancer, which shifted a staggering 20 million units worldwide. She reinvented her image with spiked hair, leather miniskirts, and denim jackets, proving that sensuality had no expiration date. Her 50-year career culminated in over 100 million record sales and 12 Grammy Awards. Tina Turner's legacy is a testament to the fact that true desire is born from strength. She took a body that had been broken and turned it into an immortal temple of rock and roll triumph. Donna Summer. While others sang about love, Donna Summer gave it a heartbeat, a pulse, and a soundtrack. As the undisputed queen of disco, Summer was the sonic architect of the late 1970s, a woman whose voice and form defined the era of hedonism and liberation. Her breakthrough hit, 1975's Love to Love You Baby, featured 22 simulated orgasms and lasted over 16 minutes in its extended version, cementing her image as an ethereal, shimmering goddess of desire. With her tall, statuesque frame, cascading dark curls, and gowns that draped like liquid silk, she possessed a First Lady of Love persona that made her the focal point of every dance floor from Studio 54 to the discotheques of Paris. The numbers behind her reign were unprecedented. Summer was the first artist to have 3 consecutive double albums reach #1 on the Billboard charts, and the first female artist to have 4 #1 singles in a 12-month period. Yet the weight of being a sex goddess was a burden she never truly asked for. Born LaDonna Adrienne Gaines in a conservative Christian environment, Summer struggled with the hypersexualized image the industry forced upon her. The tension between her private faith and her public disco queen mantle led to a period of deep depression and a reported suicide attempt during the height of her fame. Beyond the glitz of I Feel Love, a track David Bowie famously claimed changed the sound of the future, Donna was a multifaceted artist who painted and wrote her own lyrics. As disco faded, she successfully transitioned into rock and R&B with She Works Hard for the Money, an anthem for the working-class woman that showcased a more grounded yet still undeniably stylish version of herself. Despite her massive success, she was often unfairly targeted by controversy in her later years, but her influence remained unshakable. When she passed away in 2012 from lung cancer, the world didn't just lose a voice. It lost the woman who turned electronic music into a visceral, physical experience, proving that a body in motion is the ultimate form of art. Eartha Kitt. Orson Welles once described Eartha Kitt as the most exciting woman in the world, a title she earned through a lethal combination of feline grace and a voice that sounded like velvet-wrapped gravel. Eartha did not merely perform, she prowled. Her physique was a marvel of compact athletic precision, maintained through a lifelong devotion to dance and fitness that allowed her to execute high kicks and backbends well into her 70s. As the first black woman to achieve mainstream success as a femme fatale in the 1950s, Eartha broke the mold of how black women were perceived. She was neither the mammy nor the girl next door. She was the sophisticated, multilingual predator who demanded diamonds, champagne, and absolute devotion. Her career was defined by a series of high-fashion, high-impact moments, from her sultry rendition of Santa Baby, which became a gold record and a perennial holiday classic, to her iconic role as Catwoman in the 1960s Batman TV series. Clad in a shimmering, skin-tight catsuit, Eartha's Catwoman was a revolution, marking one of the first times a black woman was portrayed as an apex of sexual power and intellectual cunning on national television. Her allure was rooted in her purr, a distinctive trill that could command a room of world leaders. However, Eartha's sharp tongue was as famous as her sharp cheekbones. In 1968, at the height of her fame, she was blacklisted in the United States for nearly a decade after making anti-Vietnam War comments during a luncheon at the White House, which reportedly moved Lady Bird Johnson to tears. The CIA kept a file on her, and for years she was forced to work exclusively in Europe. But Eartha Kitt was a survivor of the highest order. Born into extreme poverty on a South Carolina cotton plantation, she used her sexiest body as a shield and a weapon. She returned to Broadway in the late 70s, earning Tony and Emmy nominations, proving that her magnetism was not just skin deep, it was a force of nature that no government or industry could ever truly silence. Tammi Terrell. If Dorothy Dandridge was the Aphrodite of film, Tammi Terrell was the Venus of Motown. With a face that radiated a crystalline girl-next-door purity and a body that possessed an effortless rhythmic elegance, Tammi was the label's most potent symbol of youthful desire and romantic hope. Her chemistry with Marvin Gaye remains the gold standard for musical partnerships. Together, they produced a string of hits like Ain't No Mountain High Enough and Your Precious Love that defined the sound of young America. Tammi wasn't just a singer, she was a visual poem, her every movement on stage reflecting a sophisticated yet accessible sensuality that made every man in the audience believe in true love. Yet the radiant smile the public saw was often a mask for a body that was being systematically destroyed from both the outside and the inside. Before finding fame at Motown, a teenage Tammi was subjected to horrific physical abuse during a stint in James Brown's Revue. Later, her relationship with David Ruffin of The Temptations was marked by further violence. She was once reportedly struck with a motorcycle helmet and even a machete. The sexiest body that the world coveted was, in reality, a vessel of immense suffering, enduring trauma that few could imagine while she sang about the heights of devotion. The tragedy took a definitive turn on October 14, 1967. During a performance in Virginia, Tammi collapsed into Marvin Gaye's arms on stage. What was initially thought to be exhaustion was revealed to be a malignant brain tumor. Over the next 3 years, the woman who had captivated a nation underwent 8 grueling brain surgeries. The decline was agonizing. She lost her sight, her hair thinned, and her weight plummeted until she was a shadow of the vibrant girl who had set Motown ablaze. When she died at the tender age of 24, she left behind a legacy of 7 top 40 singles and a grieving industry. Tammi Terrell's life remains a heartbreaking reminder of a star who gave the world all of her light while her own world was encroached by darkness. Florence Ballard. Florence Ballard was the founding soul and the original prime of the Supremes. the woman whose voluptuous silhouette and thunderous, soulful voice gave the group its initial grit. While the industry eventually pivoted toward a more waif-like aesthetic, Florence represented a classic, healthy, and deeply seductive version of Black womanhood. She possessed a regal, brick-house physique that commanded attention the moment she stepped onto a stage. It was Florence who chose the name The Supremes, and it was her powerhouse vocals, capable of cutting through a full brass section, that anchored their early sound. With her radiant smile and expressive eyes, she was the visceral heart of Motown's most successful girl group. However, the very traits that made her a star became the catalysts for her displacement. Motown founder Berry Gordy shifted the focus to Diana Ross, favoring a slimmer, more pop-friendly look for white mainstream audiences. Florence, with her more seductive and soulful curves, was increasingly pushed to the background, her microphone volume lowered and her lead parts stripped away. This systemic erasure of her talent led to a downward spiral of depression and alcoholism. By 1967, she was unceremoniously fired from the group she started, replaced at the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas just hours before a show. The aftermath was a brutal descent from the heights of glamour to the depths of poverty. After losing a legal battle against Motown for her royalties, Florence was forced to move into a cramped Detroit apartment, supporting her 3 children on welfare. The woman who once wore custom-made Dior gowns and headlined worldwide tours was reduced to counting pennies for groceries. Despite a brief, brave attempt at a comeback, the physical and emotional toll was too great. She died of a coronary thrombosis at just 32, leaving behind a legacy of 10 #1 singles that she helped create but never fully profited from. Florence Ballard remains the Lost Supreme, a reminder of how the industry can adore a body and a voice, yet coldly discard the woman behind them. Mary Wells. Before there was a Supremes mania, there was Mary Wells, the undisputed queen of Motown. As the label's first true solo superstar, Mary Wells was the blueprint for the modern pop-soul diva. She possessed an effortless, breezy sensuality that felt both sophisticated and incredibly approachable. With her signature come-hither gaze and a lean, graceful physique that looked stunning in the mid-century sheath dresses of the era, she broke down the doors of segregated radio. Her 1964 smash hit, My Guy, didn't just top the charts, it became a global phenomenon, making her the first Motown artist to be nominated for a Grammy Award. Mary's allure was rooted in her heavy-lidded vocal style, a warm, smoky delivery that suggested a maturity far beyond her years. She was a songwriter in her own right, having pitched her first hit, Bye Bye Baby, to Berry Gordy at the age of 17. At the peak of her fame, she was so popular that the Beatles invited her to open for them on their 1964 UK tour, citing her as their favorite American singer. She was the face of a new generation of Black excellence, proving that a Black woman could be a mainstream fashion icon and a chart-topping juggernaut simultaneously. However, a fateful decision on her 21st birthday changed everything. Seeking artistic and financial freedom, Mary sued to leave Motown, a move that resulted in her being effectively blacklisted by the industry's power players. The big labels were wary of her rebellious streak, and her subsequent recordings failed to capture the magic of her Motown years. Her life became a grueling cycle of touring small clubs to make ends meet. The ultimate tragedy struck in 1990 when she was diagnosed with laryngeal cancer. A 2-pack-a-day smoking habit had ravaged the voice that once captivated millions. Without health insurance, she lost her home and was forced to rely on the charity of peers like Bruce Springsteen and Diana Ross to pay her medical bills. She passed away at 49, a pioneer who paved the way for every Black female pop star that followed, reminding us that even the brightest stars can be eclipsed by the shadows of the industry. Barbara McNair. Barbara McNair was the embodiment of Black Hollywood royalty long before the term became a staple of social media. A multifaceted entertainer whose career spanned across jazz clubs, Broadway stages, and major motion pictures, McNair possessed a refined, statuesque beauty that was often described as aristocratic. Her physique was a masterclass in poise, toned, elegant, and radiates an aura of high fashion sophistication. In 1969, she made history by becoming one of the first Black women to host her own syndicated variety series, The Barbara McNair Show. On screen, she was a vision of 1960s glamour, draped in shimmering sequins that highlighted a silhouette so perfect she was invited to pose for Playboy, a move that solidified her status as a global icon of Black sensuality. However, the Queen of Television image was shattered in 1972 by a headline that felt like a scripted nightmare. McNair was arrested for possession of 14 grams of heroin after signing for a package mailed to her hotel. Although she was eventually cleared of all charges, with her husband, Rick Manzi, taking the legal blame, the damage to her squeaky clean brand was instantaneous. The industry, notoriously unforgiving toward Black women at the time, turned cold. Her show was canceled, and the lucrative contracts dried up. The tragedy deepened in 1976 when Manzi was found murdered in their Las Vegas home in a suspected mob-related hit, leaving Barbara to face a grueling police interrogation while mourning her partner. Despite the back-to-back trauma and a later $458,000 bankruptcy filing, McNair's resilience remained her strongest asset. She fought to rebuild her career, transitioning into theater and continuing to perform for dedicated audiences who never forgot her velvet voice and striking presence. She lived with a quiet dignity until her passing from throat cancer at age 73. Barbara McNair's story is a poignant look at a woman who conquered the most difficult barriers in entertainment, only to have her Golden Girl life dismantled by association and systemic bias, proving that in the spotlight, even the most elegant armor has its chinks. Esther Phillips. If the blues had a physical form, it would look and sound like Esther Phillips. Born Esther Mae Jones and discovered at age 14 as Little Esther, she was a child prodigy who possessed the world-weary soul of a centenarian. Her sex appeal was unconventional. It wasn't found in a polished pop image, but in her raw, husky, and intensely emotive delivery. Esther had a lean, street-smart allure, a sharp, angular beauty that felt authentically connected to the smoky bars and jazz cellars she frequented. When she sang, her body would contort with the effort of squeezing out every drop of pain, making her one of the most visceral and human performers of the R&B era. The statistics of her early success were staggering. She scored 3 #1 R&B hits in 1950 alone, a feat nearly unheard of for a teenager. But this early exposure to the adult world of touring and nightclubs led to a lifelong battle with addiction. By the time she was 18, Esther was already grappling with a heroin habit that would haunt her for the rest of her days. Her sexiest body became a canvas of her struggles, alternating between gaunt thinness during her lowest points and a defiant, gritty strength when she returned to the stage. Her 1972 masterpiece, Home is Where the Hatred Is, was more than a song. It was a chilling, public confession of her war with stimulants. The brilliance of her talent never flickered, even as her health did. In 1975, she achieved a massive crossover hit with a disco-infused version of What a Difference a Day Makes, which earned her a Grammy nomination. Yet behind the triumphant return, her liver and kidneys were failing after decades of substance abuse. She performed until she literally could not stand, her voice becoming rougher and more haunting with every passing year. When she died at 48 from organ failure, the music world lost a genius who had spent her entire life trading her physical well-being for artistic truth. Esther Phillips remains a legend of the raw side of fame, a woman who was desired for her honesty as much as her artistry. Marpessa Dawn. Marpessa Dawn was a breathtaking anomaly in the landscape of mid-century stardom, a woman whose ethereal, mixed-heritage beauty felt like a bridge between continents. Born in Pennsylvania but destined to become a legend in Paris, Marpessa possessed a fragile yet fierce vitality that stunned the global film community. Her physique was a masterclass in delicate, athletic grace, a silhouette that seemed to vibrate with the rhythms of the bossa nova. In 1959, she became a permanent fixture in cinematic history as Eurydice in the masterpiece Black Orpheus. Clad in simple cotton dresses against the vibrant, chaotic backdrop of the Rio de Janeiro Carnival, her sexiest body wasn't defined by glamour, but by a raw, pulsing vitality that earned the film the Palme d'Or at Cannes and an Academy Award. However, the global adoration for Black Orpheus became a gilded cage. While the film grossed millions and turned Marpessa into an overnight icon, Hollywood's rigid racial structures had no place for a woman of her exotic allure. She wasn't considered for the lead roles reserved for white actresses, nor did she fit the domestic maid stereotypes often assigned to Black women. This systemic rejection forced her into a life of exile in France. She transitioned into a nomadic career as a singer and stage actress, touring through Belgium, Switzerland, and North Africa. Despite her talent, the financial stability that usually accompanies an Oscar-winning film eluded her. She spent decades raising 5 children while scraping by on the earnings from low-budget European television and theater. The tragedy of Marpessa Dawn lies in her invisibility within her home country. While Europe celebrated her as a muse, America largely forgot the woman who had carried one of the most celebrated films in history on her shoulders. Her later years were marked by hardship and a quiet withdrawal from the spotlight. In a haunting twist of fate, she passed away from a heart attack in Paris just 42 days after her Black Orpheus co-star, Breno Mello. Marpessa Dawn remains a symbol of the one who got away, a beauty so profound and a talent so immense that a biased industry simply didn't know how to sustain her light, leaving her to flicker out in a foreign land. Sheila Guyse. If the mid-20th century had a girl next door with the allure of a runway model, it was Sheila Guyse. A standout of the sepia cinema era and a darling of the Broadway stage, Sheila possessed a smooth, honeyed voice and a face that could melt the hardest of hearts. Her physique was the epitome of 1940s elegance, slim, poised, and radiating a wholesome yet undeniable sensuality that made her a favorite for magazines like Our World and Jet. In films like Boy, What a Girl, 1947, and Miracle in Harlem, 1948, Sheila proved that Black beauty was not a monolith. She brought a gentle, sophisticated charm to the screen that rivaled any Hollywood starlet of the time. Yet, Sheila's ascent was constantly sabotaged by a series of physical and social walls. In 1953, at the cusp of a major Broadway breakthrough in Mile High, she was struck down by a massive stomach ulcer that left her comatose and required a chain of painful surgeries. This health crisis robbed her of her momentum, forcing her into a 6-month hiatus that allowed her big break to slip through her fingers. Furthermore, her personal life became a target for public scrutiny when she entered an interracial marriage with a white dancer, Kenneth Davis. In the early 1950s, this union was a lightning rod for controversy, resulting in professional blacklisting and intense social pressure that eventually contributed to the marriage's collapse. Despite these setbacks, Sheila remained a resilient artist, earning an Outer Circle Critics Award for Lost in the Stars and an Emmy nomination for her role in The Green Pastures. However, the industry's refusal to grant her A-list opportunities due to skin color bias meant she never reached the stratospheric heights her talent deserved. Her later life was a quiet, dignified retreat into family, though it was marked by the devastating loss of her 3-year-old son, Michael. She spent her final years in Hawaii, her brilliant past gradually clouded by Alzheimer's disease. Sheila Guyse's legacy is one of unfinished potential, a woman whose beauty and voice were world-class, but whose path was perpetually blocked by a world not yet ready for her brilliance. Veretta Dillard. Veretta Dillard was the hustle and soul of the 1950s R&B circuit, a woman whose career was a masterclass in the triumph of the spirit over physical adversity. Known for a voice that was husky, thick, and dripping with raw emotion, Veretta possessed the stage presence that was nothing short of a paradox. On screen and in promotional photos, she was a vision of mid-century sensuality, boasting a fiery, bombshell physique, a radiant smile, and an aura of unshakable confidence. Yet, beneath the glamorous gowns and the sexiest body image lay a secret of immense pain. Veretta had been born with a congenital bone condition that left her with permanently weakened and deformed legs. For most of her life, she walked with a pronounced limp, a reality she masked with incredible poise every time she stepped before a microphone. Her rise to fame was meteoric. In 1951, she achieved the nearly impossible feat of winning the Apollo Theater's amateur contest twice, a victory that led to a contract with Savoy Records. Her 1953 smash hit, Mercy Mr. Percy, became a definitive R&B anthem, reaching #1 on the charts and cementing her status as a household name. Veretta's allure was rooted in the bluesy depth of her delivery. When she sang, you could hear the echoes of her childhood spent in hospital wards. She was also a woman of historic firsts, having been invited to perform at the legendary Moondog Coronation Ball in 1952, widely considered the first ever rock and roll concert. However, Veretta's career was often overshadowed by the very tragedy she sang about. In 1955, she recorded "Johnny Has Gone," a haunting tribute to her friend Johnny Ace, who had died in a tragic game of Russian roulette. The song became a top 10 hit, but forever tied her image to loss and mourning. As the 1950s gave way to the rock and roll explosion, the industry's hunger for younger, more malleable stars meant that Veretta was pushed to the sidelines. By the early 1960s, she transitioned into gospel music with her husband's group, eventually dedicating her life to music therapy for chronically ill children, mirroring her own painful upbringing. When she passed away in 1993 from cancer at age 60, she was remembered as a forgotten genius. Veretta Dillard remains a testament to the fact that beauty is not just a physical trait, but a form of resilience, proving that the most captivating stars are often those who have walked the hardest paths. The lights have dimmed, and the applause has long since faded, leaving behind a haunting question. Does extreme beauty bring a hidden curse, or is the entertainment industry simply a cold machine designed to exploit and discard? We've seen voices silenced by bias and bodies broken by the weight of public desire. Some say these women were architects of their own fate, while others argue they were victims of a fractured system. What do you believe? Was it the price of fame or a tragedy of the era? Drop a comment below and let's debate. Your voice keeps their history alive. Thank you for walking through the past with Memory Lane Black people. Don't forget to like, share, and stay tuned for more untold truths.